you mentioned the handout for them. They can download that. And then at the end, we're going to have a special bonus coupon for those that attend. So I just want to make that clear too. Okay, I'm ready to begin. Welcome. This class is on Workspaces in accordance. It's a very introductory beginning level. I threw myself into it because I wanted to know more about Workspaces. I know that if they're, I've seen people's workspaces and sometimes they're just like their desk at home. They have books all over the place and I don't even know how they navigate from one pile to another pile. I've seen desktops on the computer where 30 or 40, 50 windows are open and just little tiny views, but and I wonder, how do people keep track? Now, one thing about Workspaces is it's like a canvas, it's like a painting. Everyone has a different focus of what they want to do. Maybe it's word studies, maybe it's commentaries, maybe it's for preaching. And the Workspace allows you to customize it in accordance to create what you want to create for yourself. And it's unlimited amount of creation. And every time I come to a workspace, I look at it like a canvas of what am I going to paint today? Is it going to be a mountain or portrait? It's going to be of animals. Or I could say, is it going to be a topical study? Is it going to be a word study? What kind of canvas am I going to work with today? And so I threw myself into Workspaces because we just have never done a lot of webinars on Workspaces. And I realized that there are, even with your preferences, setting things up, there's just so much to know. And that you can play around with, not to know, but to play around with to get different results that are sort of fun and exciting. But I don't want you to be intimidated. I want you to enjoy Workspaces. I want you to explore. I hope that this class will spark you to be creative and to just explore for yourself how your library and how you want to set up a workspace. So with that being said, I have a little PowerPoint presentation I just want to go through real quickly. And Workspaces and biblical research. Well, that's basically, a workspace can be for your own devotional time and study, but a lot of times authors that I know, people that I know, they like to set their workspaces up for doing a study on a text, Bible text, a verse, a topic, or a word. The need for good biblical research. Billy Graham and others, but Billy Graham said 95% of the difficulties you will experience as a Christian can be traced to a lack of Bible study and reading. Ironside and Billy Graham also went on to say in other interviews that the thing they regretted most in their lives is that they didn't spend more time in study. And today, with the computer and the workspaces that Accordance allows, you can do all sorts of wonderful studies to grow and to benefit your life. Now, a good workspace provides order. And one of the popes, I don't know which one said this, but he said, order is heaven's first law. In research thinking, order and organization, if done correctly, is heaven. And I really go along with that. I like order. It just seems like everything, the planet in its rotation and the things that we happen in our, the seasons, there just seems to be an order to everything. When I know that my desk, when it's in order, I can get to things quicker, I'm more efficient, and it makes it so much nicer. I don't like to let things get out of hand. Accordance provides this order through its workspaces. Workspaces help to optimize your research, and I think we all know that. This lady here that wrote a book on doing research, she said that it's in its simplest form, the research process involves identification, collection, evaluation, and presentation. Biblical research is the search for truth, for God is truth, whether it be historical, scientific, or theological. So a workspace can be set up to handle things for identifying, for collecting, and for evaluating, and ultimately for presenting. And Accordance can provide all of this. There's a law, I think it's a Fangel's law of information. He just said the information you have is not what you want. and the information you want is not what you need. The good thing is today with computers, and especially with Accordance, it gives you what you want and it provides what you need most of the time. The only thing that we lack is, the books in our library, and that's one thing we're going to talk about today, is building your library so that you have the information you want and the information you have is what you really needed. Our goal, questions to be answered. What are the specific objectives you want to achieve in a workspace? You have to think this through, and you don't want to just you could dive into it and do a bunch of workspaces in one day, or you could just say, you know what, I want to really work on and get to know and tweak doing a word study desktop or a topical desktop. So we're going to look at word study desktop, verse desktops, topical studies, searches and research, and all of this comes under the thing of that you are customizing it with the books you have for the need you have. And Accordance, again, is the answer, can help you to set up all of these types of workspaces. So with that, I have a handout for you. And the handout covers what I just went over. Don't have fun, don't be intimidated. What is a workspace? Well, a workspace refers to, in Accordance, the grouping of library resources. Let me turn off my camera at this point. Library resources into tabs and panes inside of zones. Now, tabs and panes are different. We're going to learn a little bit about all of these things, what a zone is, what a tab and a pane. You can create multiple workspaces that act like virtual desktops. Workspaces are meant to help one focus on specific tasks by reducing clutter and making the desktop easier to navigate to get useful information. Ultimately, the Accordance workspace can be customized and used to organize your materials for the way you want to work. Some things I want to talk about, and as we get into it, but a workspace is the canvas, and around the workspace you have certain items, like you have a toolbar. Now people think, well, can I adjust my icons and change my icons around and then save that as a workspace? No, the toolbar is static. So if you change your icons and then you think that it's going to apply to a new workspace, it applies to your old workspaces exactly just what you just changed, because it's a supporting character. It's a toolbar. It's not the actual workspace. Instant Detail is a pane. And now that one, if you do create a workspace and you have it open and you save the workspace and you bring it back, it will open. If you have it closed, it stays closed. A library, your library is so important in Accordance, and you can have a workspace saved so that the library opens up, or that the library is not open when you open a workspace, but you cannot change the order of your books. We're going to talk about that. A zone is a window consisting of various materials and tabs or panes, and you can have multiple zones going on at once in a single workspace. And you can also have multiple workspaces that you can amplify to. And we're going to talk a little bit about a session. In Accordance, a lot of people say, well, what's a session? Well, and it's also a little trick to get to it. So I'm going to show you a few tricks on sessions. But Accordance automatically saves a session every 5 minutes, up to 50 sessions. So if you're working and you lose your place and a half hour later you go, where was I? It's like a history in your Google or your internet browser. You can go to your sessions and you can look at the time stamps and you can go back and it will open right up to that particular time that you were working on whatever books were open and how you have the layout and so forth. I've already touched on what we're not going to cover. This is for beginners, and part 2 in a month, Mark Allison is going to do a more intermediate and advanced workspaces on things like constructs and infer searches, special commands that are very helpful to have, that you don't want to have to set up every single time that you go into your Accordance program. So we won't have time just with what I'm doing to get into the more advanced, but I'm letting you know that that's going to happen. That will be in a coming up workshop, and you'll want to participate in that. So today we're going to talk about creating, using, saving a few types of workspaces. We have the daily reading, we have simple, we have word, Hebrew word studies, Greek word studies, verse studies. Some of my favorites are like topical, and you'll see why. And so we'll go into that. And then also, I just want to, in this little handout, to let you know what's here. It's really important, again, to get to know the books in your library and to move your favorite books to the top of each category section that they're in, and you'll see why. We're going to talk about tying tabs in the link command and setting your field token. You'll understand that when we get to it, and cycling. And so anyway, you can go through this. At the very end, I talked about a little bit of the difference between saving a workspace and saving a session. So that's the handout that you have. And I'm going to close that out now. And we're just going to go right into Accordance. And I'm going to close this out. And oops, get here and get here. And so here we are in Accordance. And a lot of times, if you have the program and you're just new with it, we have classes on setting preference. So your opening workspace may not look like mine. This is sort of my very default simplified one that I can start to work with as a canvas. But usually under Workspaces, I think you do come with an English study, a Greek, because you have some different ones depending on your level that you can open, and you can see that you can adjust the fonts in the desktop and the margins in the desktop, and you can do all sorts of customizing within a desktop. But again, I'm going to just show you sort of how I work, and hopefully it might give you some ideas of what you can do as well. So I'm going to just start first of all by closing out this, and just this is my desktop right here. This is my workspace. Right now it's a blank canvas. There's nothing on it. This is my toolbar where I can open stuff up. I can customize my toolbar, but again, remember, once you get your toolbar customized to be set the way you want it, you don't want to change it. It will stay with every workspace that you open just as is. And if you change it, then it will be different every time it'll be that new change on that new workspace that you're working on. So this is a workspace. It says Workspace. And what I'm going to do, the first thing you have to think about is what kind of a workspace do I want to do right now? How complex do I want it to be? What do I want to start out doing? And so we're going to just look at some very simple starts. One of the things that we can do is a reading plan. And you'll notice that right now it says I'm in this workspace, but under preferences, you can set up your reading plan. And if you click on it, it opens up. See, there's the one I started with, but it says, oh, here's already a daily reading workspace. It's called Daily Reading. That's the name of the workspace. Today is May the 12th, and over here it has all of the verses that are contained within this passage to study from this particular work, the daily light on the daily path. Now, if you go down to the next, my windows are a little bit funny here, but if you go down to the next one, I'm going to open up the table of contents. And if I go down to the 13th, well, the 13th does not show anything from 1 Timothy. So in order to make that active, this tells you that right now the active devotional was for the 12th. So I'm just going to backtrack and say 13th and hit enter, and then it goes right to that. So the verses stay right with it. This highlights in red. This is a built-in little workspace, and it's just helpful if you're doing daily devotionals. And that's about all I'm going to say. However, I do want to say this. As we go forward, and as you play with your workspaces and you think, wow, I wish we could do this under Accordance, or I wish a workspace would do this, would you please jot that down, your thoughts, and either go on to our forums and talk about it or email us, because I'd really like to make our workspaces more user-friendly, more powerful, more effective for the types of studies that you're doing, and we really do appreciate your input on all of that. Well, now we're going to move into some of the fun stuff on work, well, the some of the things that I think are sort of fun with a workspace. So for this initial one, I'm going to just open up one zone and show you a workspace and how much work you can do with just a single zone. So what is a zone? Well, if I go to my library and I can choose whatever translation I want, I'm going to choose the ESV because I think that's in everyone's library, even from the starter. I have this, and then I can say, well, where do I want to go? Well, let's just start in Genesis. So I'm not going to type Genesis up here. I can just hit there and hit enter, and it should go back to Genesis because it's going to say, you know, we're looking at the whole Bibles. And so here's Genesis. I can say, you know what? I want that font to be a little bigger. So I look around, and on one of near the top over the text somewhere, I don't know, on a Mac, it's on the right side, there's A's. I think it's on the Windows, it's on the other side. But you can adjust the font and make it bigger. And I'm going to do this because this is not the default, but if I'm going to save this workspace, I can customize things as I'm going along, and then when I save the workspace, even the font sizes and things are saved for that workspace, not as the default for everything, but for that workspace. So I'm going, okay, well, since I'm in the Hebrew Bible and in Genesis, let's see what I can do. This is a single zone. Everything you see here is a single zone. If I opened up a different type of a work, let's say I go to my library and I get down and I open up a dictionary. If I open it from the library, it's going to open up in its own zone. You see that? So this is, now I have two zones open. I'm just showing you what the difference is. This is the active zone when I click on it. This one grays out. This one becomes the active zone when I click on it. And you can have multiple zones going, but like I said, I just wanted to show you what the zones are. But I'm going to show you how much you can do in just a single zone. Again, for simplicity's sake, it's nice sometimes just to have a single zone workspace because then I can combine workspaces to do multiple things. So what I'm going to do is let's think about what I can do here. Well, one thing that I can do is this thing called live click, and you all know what a live click is. Live click allows you to, if you're in a work that has strongs, and if you click on a word, if you have it set up, and you can set up your live click with the little gear, but again, this is on Workspaces, not on the functionality. We have all sorts of classes throughout the week on how to set your preferences. I just want to give you some ideas though, what you can do. When the live click is turned on, if I click on a word, Accordance goes to work and it goes through all of my lexicons and finds information on that word. It goes through all of my resources that are tied to Strong's and shows me information on that word. So whether I'm in Chinese or if I'm in Spanish, whatever, if it's tied to Strong's, it will show up in this zone. Well, now it's starting to look pretty busy, isn't it? I have just only 3 windows open, and I have this table of contents kind of a thing showing me the sources. So there are certain things you can do with certain zones, and then there are things you can't do with zones. But in this case, because it's all tied to my ESV, I can actually click on that zone and I can drag it. See, I'm holding my left mouse button down, and I'm dragging it over right next to where it says ESV with Strong's, and I'm letting go, and it now put it in the tab. And I want to do the same thing with the word usage. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to drag it over here, and see how it shows that word usage is right next to the lexicon lookup. And so look at that. Now I'm just back to one zone. It's much easier to look at. If I click on the word waters, even though the live click is on, it doesn't go and doesn't open up additional windows. I can go right to here and look at all of my lexicons on waters. I can look at the word usage from all of my works with Strong's on waters. That's pretty good. Let me do something else. Now, many of you may or may not know this, that with live click and in other ways to get to dictionaries, if you're in a work with Strong's, a Bible text with Strong's, if you hold your shift key down on your keyboard and you click on a word, it does something different than doing a study through your lexicons. So I'm going to go to the word earth. I'm going to hold my shift key down, and while it's being held down, I'm going to click on the word earth. Okay, I did. Well, what happened? Well, let's look at the lexicon lookup. It now has gone and switched over to my dictionaries on that word. Actually, I was on the word the. Oh dear, let's go back over here. Let's hold the shift key down and let's look at the word. Where was it? Darkness. Well, let's look at heaven. So I clicked on heaven, and this should have gone to heaven. Yeah, heaven, anchor from heaven. And you can then scroll through this quickly to just sort of see which ones have articles on heaven that you want to look at, or if you want to open it up, you can. And then in the word usage, it gives me all of my Bibles that have, it's done an instant concordance search through everything that's, not a Strong's work, and giving me that concordance search for that word. So how did I do that? I went and I just went to a word, and I hold the shift key down and I click on that one word, and then vegetation, and then I come here and there's vegetation from my dictionaries. There is word usage on vegetation. Let's go back to Strong's. Let's not hold the shift key down. So if I don't hold the shift key down and hit darkness, now it's going to go to my lexicons. So remember, the shift key overrides that. And so even though there are two tabs, these tabs, I don't have to open up multiple tabs. I can use them for dual functionality to show me my word studies or to show me a dictionary article. And I'm keeping things neat and orderly, and that's, for me, is the way I like it. So that's nice. So that's going on. I'm going to leave live, click on, and now let's add some things in here. So why don't we add into that? We're going to add a parallel. I can add an info pane. Why I'm going to add the info pane in, as you'll see in just a second. No, I'm not going to do, I'm not going to do that. Since I'm already doing some word studies, let's go ahead and build this out a little bit more with word studies. Oh, so one thing that I would like is to go here, and I'm going to add a text, and I'm going to add in a Hebrew text. And because it's Strong, you all know that with concordance, you can point to a word in English or in the Hebrew, and you'll see the equivalent on the other side. Now, you can also turn on, of course, at any time you're interlinear if you want to just go this route. And since I'm doing this, why don't I also open up my instant detail so I can take a look at the morphology of a word as I'm going. And you see how this workspace now is becoming a little bit more complex, but it's still very, very, very useful. What else would be good to have? Well, I think I'm going to add into it a word study commentary. So what's a good word study commentary? Well, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to go to I've actually created word study commentary sections, and I'm going to go down to K and D, Old Testament. And so that sort of gives me a word study on the words that I'm looking at. And another thing that might be nice to have in this would maybe be, if you have it, I can go down here to my Semitic studies and get the Hebrew verb parsing, so I can look at what these verbs mean, and when I'm taking a look at them, that'd be helpful. I could even, if I want to, I can add, let's add one more thing. Let's go ahead and add in Hebrew syntax. Again, it's a little bit, you don't have to go this, I'm just doing a word study just to show you what I can do. And so I'm going to add in the syntax. Whoops, that's the inscriptions, I didn't want that. Let's close this out here. Let's add in the ETBC. There we go. So you can see that in just one window, I have an interlinear that I can turn on and off. I have my Hebrew text. I have a commentary, and I have something that gives me a little bit about verbs in the Hebrew language, and I can adjust the windows to make it look nicer and neater. And if I click on a word, the word created here, well, then that's going to go to the word created, and my word usage is going to go to it. That's nice. If I hold my shift key down and hit on a word, then that's going to go to beginning through my dictionaries. That's good. The word usage goes through that. So again, that looks fancy, but it's really actually quite easy. I've got, just to let you know, I've got a big sand crane knocking on my back door trying to get inside because he's so excited about this teaching. He wants to get in here. I've never seen him do that before. Or so. Anyway, let's do something else. Again, this is a single zone. What else could I do with a single zone? Well, and this is a little trick you might find helpful. I'm going to open up, what am I missing? I have some word studies here. I can look at dictionaries. I can look at lexicons. I'm missing commentaries and study Bibles, aren't I? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up a new tab within this zone. And I'm going to go down here and I'm going to just open up another ESV. I could open up whatever I want to open up. So I put it right next because those are relational. I'll put them right next to each other, which is fine. And what should I put in this one? Oh, I opened up the ESV Study Bible. I meant to open up the ESV translation. So let me close this off and let me go here. Let me open up the ESV translation. And so they'll open up. Oh, I hit the plus sign. And ESV with Strong's. And there we go. So now it says that I have two ESVs open. Here's the first one. Here's the second one. And I don't have live click on, and I don't want it to be turned on, and you'll see why. And now I'm going to add into this one commentaries and study Bibles that will stay linked to my first Strong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here. I'm going to add my info pane on. And so there's the text. And so, you know what? I don't really necessarily maybe need that instant detail, so I'm going to turn that off. And I go through my commentaries, and to open up a commentary within this zone and within this tab, I just simply click on the commentary and it opens itself up. If I want to add something like an outline, I can go down here to reference tools and I can go down to my biblical studies and I can find an outline of the books of the Bible and I can open them up. If I want to open up study Bibles, I can just simply click on the study Bible I want to open and it opens up. Now that's nice, but what can I do with this? It's a tab. There I am in my word studies. Here's my commentaries. What can I do with this tab? I'm going to close out the info pane for now because I can create another tab and I can have multiple tabs within this one zone. But I want to sort of redesign this. So maybe I want to, I can't, you can see I can't close out my Bible. I can close out any of my commentaries down below, but I can't close out my Bible. However, you can. Let me show you how. All you have to do, if I want this to be a parallel commentary window, all I do is I just simply grab this and I drag it to where I want it to be and I let it go. Now it's moved the ESV and it has an X there, so I can now close that. So all I have here are commentaries. And now I can click on another commentary and move that up. And now I have two commentaries. And I could, I have my outline down here and then I have my study Bibles down here. So the only thing that's left to do is that if I'm here, and I'm going to turn off the interlinear because you can turn that on or off. And if I want to go down to Exodus, I hit next book. That's at Exodus. Everything goes very, very quickly. If I go to my Strong's 2, it didn't go to Exodus. It just stayed where I was at. So what I need to do now is to tie tabs together. And so tabs you can tie, and usually tabs work best when you're tying from a reference work like a study Bible or a commentary, something that's arranged by book, chapter, and verse. You can tie those tabs together so that they work in parallel with each other and one can drive the other. So I'm going to switch this over to tie tab and I'm going to say tie it to the ESV with Strong's. Now, if I'm here and I go up to Genesis and back down to Exodus, I hope that when I click on this tab, it's also going to say, I went right with you to Exodus. And indeed it did. So here is Exodus. I have my outlines, I have my commentaries, and I can look at them. And you can add more commentaries. You can add your top 3 commentaries, your top 3 study Bibles. I like to have an outline. You could actually create another tab that just has your study Bibles. You could have this one with just your commentaries, open another one with just your study Bibles. So however you want to do that, you can open up multiple tabs and create a very powerful single zoned workspace with multiple tabs in it. Now, I probably would back here add in my instant detail, simply because if there's a Bible verse there, I like to sort of read it by just pointing to it. Now you can always left click and hold down to see the verse, but I kind of like just to look at it as I'm going through and seeing where it goes. And the other thing you can do is you can move around in the commentaries here. And one thing that Accordance finally put in that I really appreciate is sometimes as I'm moving, I don't want everything else to move with it. So I can go into the little gear and I can tell it to untie and scrolling. That way I can scroll up and read the introduction. I can read whatever I want to about this work without everything else having to go along with it. Then when I'm ready and I'm through getting my information, I go through and I highlight and I collect stuff into my stacks. And when I'm through with that, I can go back and I can retie everything so that it's back to scrolling all together. So that's really good. So, and then this is good. So I think I'm just gonna call this, it looks more complex, but it really wasn't hard to set up. I just said, I want to do some word studies. I turned on live click. I hold when I click on a word, the lexicon looks up, the word usage looks up. If I go back, if I hold the shift key down, then it goes to my dictionaries. And so those are just a few minor things to remember, but it really helps in your studies. And then I created a secondary tab that had nothing but commentaries in it. So you can have multiple tabs going all up within one zone. Now, let's say that I want to save this. What am I going to call it? I'm just going to call it a simple study. So to save a workspace, right now it's just called Workspace. And so to save a workspace, you can click on the word Workspace, or you can go up to File and Save Workspace, I believe. I guess you can save as, but I'm going to just use the icon here because this is where I always grab them from. And it says add a workspace. Well, it's going to ask me for what's going to be the name of it. And I'm going to call it simple single zone. You don't have to be that complex, but I'm just showing you just so I know what it is. And now if I go up here and click on Workspace, you're going to see it's simple single zone. Okay, well, let's see what happens. So I'm going to close out this workspace and I'm going to open up a brand new workspace. And I go, oh man, I'm studying, I would really like to open up my single zone workspace again. So you go up to your workspace and you find it and it opens. Now what it did was it took a snapshot of where I was. When I saved it, I was at Exodus 2:23. So if you want to start with Genesis or whatever, wherever and whatever is open, to whatever book, chapter, and verse you have open, to whatever dictionary you have open, when you save a workspace, it saves all of that information. It takes a snapshot of it and says that's your template. And so I have, of course, my commentaries are all there. I can do my lookups. Everything is right there, right along with me. So it saved it and it called it a simple single zone. So that's our first one. I'm gonna close that out and let's start another one. And by the way, it also made the font bigger, which was nice, and it saved that, but my default font is always a little bit smaller. So let's go on, and I want to show you quickly a few other things that I can do. Let's say that I want to create, I really kind of like this one. This one's sort of fun. I'm just in any translation that you want to be in, any translation, and I do a search for a word. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to search for that word. And it's going to open up a second tab within that zone, and it's going to say, here is your search results for, oops, let's go bigger, for that word. So I have two tabs, ESV, the Strong's, and then ESV2, which is my search results. Now watch what I can do here. This is fun. One thing that you have are your analytics, but your analytics, they don't play well with any other tabs. They only play well with themselves, within their own family. So when you get a tab, if I want to show a pie chart, it's going to open up, and I cannot drag this pie chart over to any place else. I can release it so it becomes a different place, but I cannot drag it into a tool section. It wants to stay totally as an analytic. So just remember that. But watch what I can do. Watch how fast accordance is. This is really fun. So I'm going to click on the plus sign, and I'm going to open up not just the pie chart, but let's open up a bar. And I'm also going to open up, I'm going to open up a hit graph, and I'm going to open up concordance. Let's just have 4. We're going to start with 4. Make that a little bigger. So I'm going to now redesign my windows because I'm going to be saving this. I'm going to give the analytics a little bit more space. And I'm going to grab the bar chart and I'm going to move it down below so that it has its own window. And I'm going to move the concordance over to a side so it has its own window. And I'm going to move the hit graph on top of that. So now I have 4 windows. And yeah, let's go with this one. And you can move this around any way you want, and you can make it, you know, I like things to sort of line up. But that's pretty nice. I can give this a little bit more space. Let me do that. And I can zoom in on this and see a little bit bigger. So now watch what happens when I'm back in my ESV and I do another word. Let's look for the word, what would be a good, consider. I'm going to type it in James. It talks about the word consider. I'm going to hit enter. And now, oh, I need to do it from within here. Sorry. If you do it from within here, it actually right clicks and finds it there. So I'm going to do that. Let me just go back here. Let's go back to James. Let's go to James. And I get down here, the word is count. So I'm going to right click on count and I'm going to search for a count by a word. Now watch what happens to all of my analytics that I had opened up. So I'm doing a search for that word count under this word. And look how fast it was. I get a hit count. I get a concordance count. I get my bar of the Hebrew and the Greek words for that. I can look around throughout this. I can then switch over to it by word and see it by count. And then the Hebrew, I can click on that, how it's used, and I can go back to my prior results. So you can do a lot of things that way. Well, let's try something a little different. Let's go back here and let's do it. Let's right click on that and let's search for that by key number. Now I've searched for it by the Strong's number, and up here it just says, well, there's just one number for it because you were specifically in James. And all I need to do though is just change that to the word. And look, it's 7 times this count, 3 times this leader, 2 times this considered. I can go down here and change this to word and take a look at how it's located. I can go over here and double click on it, and it actually opens up to that passage that I'm looking at within my hit graph. I just think that it's really sort of fun to do some exploration with these analytics and say, you know, every time you come into a window, you don't want to necessarily do a search and then open up all these analytics. You can change it to whatever Bible translation you want, and you can do your analytics. You can have multiple windows here, but this is just a simple analytic window that it makes it easy to get into anytime, anywhere, any day. So I'm just going to save that workspace. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to add that as a workspace. It's going to ask you what do you want to call it. I'm going to call it analytics. and I'm going to hit enter. And now I should have analytics there. So now I have two workspaces that I've created. I've created a simple single zone and an analytics zone. And those are real helpful and to get you going. So now let's go ahead. I'm going to close this out, and I'm going to start with another brand new workspace. We're going to do another one. A couple things that I want to make sure I have time. So I'm going to sort of jump ahead and then come back. But I want to do a topical workspace, because to me, this is really, really powerful, what you can do with a topical workspace. So I'm going to increase my font size. Now you realize I don't have the live click turned on. And remember when I told you that if you're in a work with Strong's, in accordance, if you don't have live click turned on and you just want to look up that Hebrew word, and you have your preferences set up correctly, in accordance, you just triple click on it and it will open up your Hebrew lexicon, your default Hebrew lexicon to that Hebrew word. And remember that if you hold the shift key down, again, while you're in something with Strong's and you triple click, then it's going to open up your default dictionary to that. And sure enough, you see that it did. Now that this dictionary is open, though, I'm going to have some fun with doing some topical studies. So I'm going to make some more space over here, and I'm going to just show you what I can do with this. I'm going to close this off, and you see this is a field token. And in the field token, if you're in a commentary, we'll take a look at that, but dictionaries, you can look at it by entry, which is that there's a main entry on that word. English text means that it's a word found within side of the paragraph or the text. Is like doing a concordance search, and you can see the different characteristics. Every work has different characteristics. I'm going to go ahead and open up my library. I could open it up with the plus sign over here, but I want to show you what I'm about to do. I'm going to filter it. There's a little filter up here where you can show all, but I just want to get down to my tools. And my tools shows my dictionaries and my commentaries. And basically, these are the different types of works. Now, I'm going to just start with a few things in my dictionaries. You're going to notice that when I open up my dictionaries, I have what I call main dictionaries, specialized, foreign, and indexes. Now, you can, to change dictionaries around, you just simply click on the dictionary and you hold your left mouse button down and you can drag it, and you can move them anywhere up and down within that category. And this is so important. Take your favorite books in each category and move them to the top, because Accordance will look at them first. And a lot of my researches and searches require, the way I set them up, to go by library order, not alphabetical order. I want my big hitters on top so that I'm not spending or wasting a lot of time just looking through little things that are not as important. They might be important, but I want to trust my big ones first. The reason I like the ISBE is that the ISBE covers 9,600 topics. The ISBE Revised was done 100 years later or so, and it was written by a whole new team. So even though they share the same name and they share the same topics, they're complete different way they're written and by who they were written. So it's like two different encyclopedias. Anchor covers 6,400 top biblical topics and so forth. So I like to take my big hitters and those that really cover people and events and places and articles that you would find that are main things within the biblical texts. So I move my best stuff to the top. And the reason for that, I'm going to leave that open. One thing you can do in the program is if you get to your preferences, and under Windows, I think it's under Edit and then Preferences, but on a Mac, it's Accordance and Preferences. You can, under Amplify, under General, excuse me, I have my little pointer down to Change Resources and Navigate. I think the default is Move Insertion Point, but I turn it to Change Resources and Navigate. And why is that? Because again, remember, I'm at ISB, right? ISB. My next one down is ISB revised. The reason I do that little change in my preferences allows me to click in that window, and you see my icon blinking there. And then if I use my right arrow key, it goes to the next encyclopedia or dictionary in that list from my library. So again, see how it's blinking there? I just right click and it goes to anchor. See how that works? And anchor tells me there are 4 hits, and I can then go and take a look at each of the hits up or down on that main thing about beginning. To get back, I simply use the left arrow key and I can go back to where I was. I don't have to open up multiple dictionaries. I mean, this is also something you can do with a word like this, and I can also do it with, if I triple click and don't hold my shift key down, it opens up a lot. I can move this down here, so it's in a separate window. I can click in that window, I can use my arrow key, and I can go between my different lexicons, just that quick, depending on the order they are in my library. I can go over here to a Bible reference, and I can triple click on the reference, not a word, but on the reference. What is it going to do? It's going to open up a commentary, and it's going to open it up automatically linked. So then I have my link there. So now in this simple workspace, I have 3 zones: my Bible zone, actually I have 4 zones, my dictionaries, my word studies, and a commentary. Now, can I do the same thing in my commentary that I did in my dictionary and my lexicon by just clicking inside that window, watching for the I-beam to come up, and then once it is, if I hit the right arrow key, look at that, it goes to my next commentary, and so I can go through my commentaries, just what I call cycling through. Again, it's not very hard to do. It's very clean, and it keeps my focus. You know, and I can read through one, go to the next one, read through it, stay focused, and I'm not getting, and I can design this window any way that I want to design it. And then I can go up here and I can save this as however I want to save it. But what I want to do is actually get into a little bit of a word study for doing topical study. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open up the ISB. I'm going to go to my library, and when you're doing a topical study, you want to use a work that covers the largest expanse of words or biblical inquiries that you might have. That's why I use the old ISB, because again, 9,600 entries. And this is going to be my cornerstone. This is going to be the work that I want to have everything else driven by. So I never, once I decide that I'm going to create a topical work, I am not ever going to, once I set up the workspace, then I'm okay, because if I do something wrong, I can always reopen the workspace and I'm safe. It comes back to what I had. But in the template, before you save it, you never want to close out whatever is your driving force. And this is going to be this encyclopedia. So what I'm going to do is, let's go back down to my dictionaries, and I'm going to open up ISB Revised. I double click on that. Notice how it opens up in a tab because it's all under dictionary, same family. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to open up Erdman's and double click, and it opens up Erdman's. So they're all here. Now, of course, those are all going to be linked together. So let's see what that does. And then we're going to start adding some fun stuff onto it. So this is my driving force. If I come over here to ISB, I'm going to tell it that I want it to take the orders for what it's to look up from this first tab, from this first work. So to do that, I just click in that tab and hit the letter L. This is going to give me the ability to do what is called a link command. And it's going to say, when I click on it, it says, what do you want it to link to? Well, I want it to link to ISB. And I'm going to say, okay. I go over here, I click on Erdman's. I click in the field token in this address bar, I type the letter L. What do you want it to link to? I want it to link to ISB. Okay. Now I go to ISB. Now watch this. I type in a word. Let's type in a word, grace. I go to grace, hit enter, There it is in ISB. There it is in the revised ISB. And again, it tells me there are 32 hits that are main hits, and I can go through them one at a time. And I can see where the main article is. And there I am in Erdman's. They all were driven to that word from this one. Now, what's nice about that is that you could have them in separate windows. But so if I wanted to, I could have all 3 windows separated. And then let's say I go over here to Spirit. And what happens if I hold my shift key down and triple click? My ISB goes, because that's my default, but it also is the driving force to these 2. So I'm going to hold my shift key down and triple click on Spirit, and it goes to Spirit, Spirit, and Spirit. Oh my goodness. And so that just shows you and how fast it turned to those pages. Can you imagine trying to get those books out and finding all the different places that deal with that word? It does that very, very quickly. Okay, so, well, that's great. So I know it does that with my dictionaries. Of course, you expect it to do that. So I'm going to just put them back together. But let's go back over to my library, and let me open up something like Bible Knowledge Commentary. Double click on that. And I'm going to, that's turned to tools, but I want the commentaries to be sort of separate. So I'm going to bring it down here. And then I'm going to look up another commentary. I'm going to go to Oxford Commentaries, fine. And I can just go down through the different commentaries that whatever commentary I want. Sometimes I like to go through, I'll pull out an analytical, I'll pull out a preaching commentary, a background commentary, just so I have sort of a background of different ones. So I don't know what you have in your commentary sets, early church fathers. Again, I created folders. I took a whole Saturday because, you know, we have all, it wasn't fast. And I just started looking at the books and creating a folder and then moving them around within the folders to my favorite stuff. And I just really encourage others to do that because it's so helpful. So anyway, I opened up just to show you a couple commentaries. Now, this part's really fun. So I want my commentaries now to become dictionaries. That's right, you heard me. I want my commentaries to become dictionaries. So I'm going to go to Bible Knowledge, and I'm going to go to where it was a reference, because it was created to be a reference that gave me commentary notes on whatever reference I'm looking at. But I'm going to switch it over to titles, and now I click there and hit the letter L, and I'm going to link that, and I'm going to link that to ISB. Yep, that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to go to Oxford. And if it's not working right, chances are you didn't set the field token. You've got to make sure you set that correctly. And I'm going to hit link. I'm going to put link. I'm going to put that to ISB. I'm going to say OK. And then I'm going to go to preaching the word, and I'm going to hit titles, and I'm going to hit entry or link, L for link, and I'm going to put that to ISB. I'm going to say OK. Now, watch what happens. Let's get down. Let's go down a couple books and let's see. Let's look at the word offering, okay? So if I hold my shift key down, remember I have to do that because I'm doing a topical study, not a lexical study. So I'm going to hold my shift key down because it's a work with Strong's, and I'm going to triple click. And it went to offering, it went to offering, it went to offering. Bible Knowledge went to offering, it went to 38, and I can go to I can read through all the law of the burnt offering, and this is a commentary now acting like a topical work. I can go to Oxford, and it didn't have any hits. So sometimes you see that some do and some don't. This one has 11 hits, and so you can just go through and you can go and you can find stuff. So now my commentaries are acting like topicals. Well, what other things, they're just real quick, that we can do for topicals? And I just want to show you a few. One thing that I like for topical, I'm going to set my tools. Journals. Journals are, I mean, that's where, if you talk to people that do research, and they're always going into the journals to do the research on things. So I'm going to go down here to my journals. And I'm going to look at, I'm going to open up, we have a sale right now on the Biblical Archaeological Review, so I'm going to double click on that. And I'll just do one more just to give you an idea. Let's go down, let's go to BibSac, put that in there too. And I'm going to move them into their own windows so that they're sort of separated out. And that's, while I'm here, let me just do one more. Let me close this out and go up here to preaching. One thing that I think everybody might have is this gather gold. Let me open that one up. Let me close my library. And I'll leave the gather gold up in the dictionaries. That's fine to do that. The gather gold is unique. I don't use the titles. If I type in the word grace, just to show you, it gives me, here are a bunch of things that deal with grace, but grace may not be in the word. However, if I turn this one, if you play with it, you'll learn that if you turn it to context and then go to grace, then you have nothing but 600 quotes that you can use on grace, which I like better, but I don't have to like reading through all these things. So one thing with a workspace is you can show you can set up your text. Like I said, you can change the font and stuff, but I'm going to show the text as just as a paragraph. And so now I just see nothing but those, which is good. But I don't want grace right now. What do I want? I want it to link. So I clear out that space. I hit the letter L, and I'm going to link that to ISB because as a preacher, I want to have good quotes on grace. But as a researcher, I want to use my commentaries or my journals to give me a link and to be a topical. So I'm going to link them to ISB, and I'll link this one to ISB. And so now everything should be linked, even though there are various types of books. And you can do this with surveys, theology books, anything that has headings and subheadings become really good tools for doing topical studies. So I'm in here and I see Moses, and I want to find all my stuff on Moses. So I'm going to hold the Shift key down. I'm going to triple click on Moses. And there we have the ISB on Moses, of course. There is the ISB revised with 13 hits. There's Erdman's on ISB. Gather Gold has 3 quotes about Moses. Bible Knowledge Commentary has information on Moses. Oxford has information on Moses, the call of Moses. And then I can just go down to the hits. The challenges to Moses' leadership, the disobedience of Moses, from Moses to Joshua. Preaching the Word has information on Moses, 58 hits, and I can go through all of those. I can go over here to the BibSac. I can say what we don't know about Moses in the Exodus. I can go to the next hit down. How Moses turned a staff into a snake and back again. I can go to the BibSac and I get 2 articles, but these are like papers that were written. And it's so much fun to go through once you have a topical workspace. And so, you know what? I'm going to save this workspace. And how do I do that? And remember, I'm on Moses now, so that's kind of where it stays, but that's okay because I can use it any place, anytime. I'm going to click on my workspace. I'm going to say add workspace, and I'm going to type in topical. And there's my topical. It's now done. So let's play with this now. I'm going to show you a couple things, and then we're going to see how much time we have left to look at a few more. So I'm going to close this workspace out. And I don't know why all this stuff is opening, but let's go back and open up a new workspace and watch what I can do. So this is just a workspace, and I'm in here working, away, and I'm in, I don't know where I'm at. I'm just got let's jump around here. Yeah, there's so many good places. I don't know where I really, oh, that's a good word. Let's go back. So I'm in here and I want to know about a servant, the servant of the Lord. And I'm going, wow, I know I can triple click on this and hold the Shift key down, and then I can cycle through stuff. But I did so much work setting up a topical workspace. I'm wondering if I searched for servant in this workspace, can I actually have it go to the topical workspace and open up everything that I had created to that word servant? So The first time you do it, you simply double click on that word and you see how it's highlighted in blue? Then I go up to my workspace. Now watch this. If you blink, you'll miss it. I go to my workspace and I go to topical and watch what happens. Remember, I'm at servant, and then accordance pulls up a concordance search on servant, my ISBE's on servant, all of my servant, 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 servant. I just think that is so amazing. And because I had already set it up, this one actually goes to it. Now, that all I did was double click. Now, from here on out, however, if I want to do something on a word, I can't just click on it. I have to right click on it. And at this point, I have to say, select my workspaces and select topical. And once I do that, because it's already open, it automatically jumps to David all the way across. So your workspace is kind of like where you set up all of your living room, all your favorite books, and now you can have it to have any workspace from accordance at any time access topically everything that you had put into this one room. And so I just think that that's really, really amazing. So that's how you can do things with a workspace there. Let's also move on, because I want to just quickly do this too. It's really good, I think, to also do this with a verse study. Now, remember when I had the original verse studies, and I can go back to that. What was that called? Does anybody remember? I'm going to go to my workspaces, and it was called Simple Zone. And in this one, I had multiple commentaries, and I had to disconnect them to read through them, and I can't look at the table of contents, and there's a lot of things I just can't do. But if I wanted to do more in-depth study, I want these commentaries to be multiple commentaries and study Bibles in their own zone tied to the tab. So I'm going to create a workspace that has multiple commentaries tied to a single tab. So taking sort of this idea, but expanding on it just a bit. So let me just close this out, and we're going to start a new workspace because I'm going to want to save this. And so we got a new workspace, make the font bigger. Now, the fastest way to get your commentaries open, tied in a separate tab to a Bible verse is a little secret, maybe you already know it, is I'm going to open up in my parallels the info pane. And the commentaries that you see here are, again, in the exact order of my commentaries in my library. Bible Knowledge is first, Oxford is second, New American, and so forth. It's the exact same order, right? Study Bibles are going to be in the exact same order as my study Bibles. So to get them open, I could triple click on this, or I could go to my library and start opening them up, but then I have to tie them. And what that means is, if I open up a commentary directly from here, so let's open up, we just got some, this is really good. I'm going to actually go down to my study Bibles. We just got the CBL in, and I really like they say it's a study Bible, but it's really like a 10 volume commentary. So I'm going to open up this work, see how it opens up in its own window, right? Now what I have to do at that point is, let me go ahead and close this off, is I have to say I want this tab and this translation to drive this tab, which is a reference tab. So I have to click on the little down arrow, and I have to say I want to tie that tab to the ESV. Now it's tied, and so as I move down in my zone over here, this tied window goes right along with it. But then if I want to open up another commentary, I go here, I go to my commentaries, I find a commentary, then I have to tie it in, and so forth. And you can do it that way. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way. But a faster way to do that is I'm going to go here and I'm going to show more and more of my commentaries in the order that they're found. And if you hold the Command key down on your keyboard, if you hold the Command key down and you click on the work, it actually opens it up already tab tied. So again, I can go to the work, click on it, and it opens it up tied already. Click on it, and it opens it up tied already. So I don't know why that's doing it. So you see, I have all of those now tied to that work. I can go down here to my study Bibles. I can hold the Command key down, and it ties it, but I don't want, why is it doing that? Stop. I don't know why it's making that everything so big. But what I want to do is grab my study Bible, and I'm going to start study Bibles down below on their own. I must have something about assist or something turned on somewhere in the operating system. But I'm going to hold the Command key down and click on the next thing. Oxford, I want that down here too. Why is it doing that? It's crazy. And you see that they're all tied. So I don't know why that is doing that. But as I move along, wow, it's really showing me everything, isn't it? As I move along in my books, all of my tied tabs, and that's driving me crazy. I'm just wondering if it's the pointer. Yeah, no, that's still going to do it, isn't it? Okay, I don't know why it's doing that. Escape. But, okay, so basically, I don't need to have this on. It's going to close. It's going to show all this big font. I don't know why it's doing that. It's got to be something within the Mac. I hit something on the keyboard, and it started something. But I like this because everything goes with the verse. Ugh, that's just driving me crazy. Mark, do you know why that's going on? I'm going to interrupt and see if Mark, if you know how to turn that off.
Yeah, Richard, I think if you go, I think it is, you were right, something in your system preferences. If you go to your system preferences and go to the accessibility options, yeah, right there where it says enable hover text, turn that off.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Sure.
Yeah. So anyway, so now I can have the Bible open, or I can just open up multiple commentaries to this particular passage. And the nice thing about it is I can call this, what you're going to want to do is you want to set up one for, because we have a lot of commentaries that are just geared towards the to the Hebrew Bible or Old Testament. And we have a lot of commentaries that are geared to the New Testament. So if it was me, I would set up, I could do one where I'm just pulling commentaries that are single volume or commentaries that cover the whole scope. But I would probably set up, just like I would for a Greek word study or a Hebrew word study, I would set up a Old Testament verse study and a New Testament verse study workspace. So to do that, for now, I'm just going to call this verse study. It called it workspace. Well, okay, so it's called workspace, but I don't want that. Yeah, that's too bad. Okay, so what that means is this, though, that now if I'm in a new window and I'm at a Bible verse, I can just go here and select workspace, and it will open up that workspace to that particular verse all the way across in my everything that I have that's tied it to that title, whatever I called it. So that's something you can do with a verse study. Now, one thing I was going to show you real quick, because I'm running out of a little bit of time, is you also want to be able to do a New Testament workspace for word studies. So I would probably do one separately for the New Testament, because some of the lexicals and stuff are the same, but really what you have in this one, if you have all sorts of things that you can set up. You have under your text, you want the Greek text if you have it, and you would also want to have, I would think in this one, I really like a little parsing thing called Greek parsing that helps me understand the parts of speech as I'm going through. And of course, I'll want to turn on my instant details. And then, you can also add into that something like a word study commentary. And we have several in the Greek. The SIL, UBS, Metzger is good, so I'll just put that, but there's all sorts of ones you can add in there. You can also add into this parallel syntax. So if you wanted to add into it syntax of the Greek New Testament, you can do that. And so you see, you can sort of set up a Greek study the same way you did. You can turn on your live click, but this front window would be your Greek study. And that would be a really good place to handle. And then you just go up to your workspace and you say, I'm going to add a workspace, and it's going to ask you for what it's going to be called. And I'm going to call it simple Greek. And you'd want to do one for Hebrew too, and set up with the verbs. I think we showed a little bit more on that one than just this, but I giving you a quick idea of just how quick you can set up a specific type of a workspace for doing studies. You can do workspaces with searches and things and have them open. I really recommend against that, simply because then when you open up that workspace, it has to connect to the internet, if it's, if you're doing a web browser thing, or it has to go through and perform a search. So I tend to stay away from workspaces that have something that has to be performed in the background before you open them up. The other thing is, I'm going to go back to this workspace that I had created on my Bible references for my commentaries and so forth. I just want to show you something here that you can do. If I'm in even a commentary, if I go to a word and I triple click, I can get to my dictionary article on that particular word, and that's nice. You can, I'd recommend against this, but it's just sort of fun. You can have it so that you can be tied to something, and I have to close this out. Let me reopen it, because I got to leave the Bible open because the Bible had all the tab ties, so that's fine. So let's go to Theophilus. I'm going to move this window down to here. And then you can change this from a reference to a title. And guess what? You can link that to ISB. And so here I can look at all my commentaries as I go through, by book, chapter, and verse. But if I decide that I want to do a study on something, let's say Father, I can triple click on Father, and whatever commentary is also, now it's both has a tie to it and a link to it. So it can act to give me a verse study, but it can also act to give me a topical study. The problem is if you start moving around, then you lose your place. So I'm telling you now, I played with it. I tried to figure out a way that I could get around it because it's sort of a neat thing, and it kind of works. I put in a thing, I really would like to have a history button or a temporary bookmark so I could always get back to where I started from. But you can do that if you so choose. You can have a tab operating two different things at the same time, and that's not a problem with the way Accordance works. Okay, last thing, I want to show you our sessions. So right now I have two workspaces open. A workspace is a single thing, but a session is multiple things open at the same time. So if I had multiple workspaces open and they were all studying Theophilus, and they were studying Greek, and they were studying word studies, and they were doing dictionary studies, and I said, boy, I want to leave this all the way it is, just the way it is. and because I know that if I close out and come back the next day and open up my workspace, it's going to open up to wherever the snapshot of where I created it was, not to what I'm looking at now. So Accordance allows you to create or say what is called a session. Now, what is a session? You have auto sessions. Every 5 minutes, Accordance saves everything that you've been doing up to 50 times. So if you were wanting to go back in time and take a look at, oh, I closed that book. Oh, what was the name of that book? Just start going back through your sessions to find that screen and that workspace when you had everything open the way you wanted it. But because there are multiple things going on here, you can save that session, but it doesn't make it as straightforward as a workspace. So let me show you what I do. If I want to save the session, I have to click Save Session. It says, how do you want to save it? For me, if I want to save a session and I know it's a session, I'm going to give it the letter S, okay? And I'm going to put a hyphen and I'm going to say Ax 1, okay? So that tells me that everything that's open, all the workspaces now, is saved as a session called Ax 1. And I say Save. Now I don't have anything open. I'm going to close out everything. And I want to get to that. How do I get to that? I cannot, if I go up here and open up a workspace, and if I go over to my workspaces, there's nothing there that says Ax 1. Well, where is it? If I go to my library and I look at my tools, my stuff, there's nothing there to tell me that I'm looking for Ax 1. There's nothing there called Sessions. But Sessions is real powerful and can be very, very helpful. So how do I get to it? Well, all you do is you go up to File and you go to Open. Click on Open and it's going to say, what do you want to open? And you see it says S Ax 1. So if I click on that and open that, now it's not going to be found anywhere else. You have to say Open, and you have to distinguish it between your workspaces. These are your workspaces, but S is because I labeled it as an S. It tells me that that's a session. And I say Open, and then it's going to open all of those works that I had and all of those workspaces that I had. Here's my Greek, and here it is. And it opened them right up to me. Where was I? Acts chapter 1. It did it perfectly. So that's how a session works for you. And I know there's so much more, but I really have fun with topical studies, with Greek and Hebrew, Workspaces, with single zones that you can do a lot with. So we covered a lot of territory, and I know it's overwhelming, but again, don't be intimidated. Play with it. Play with it as you go through and say, look at opening up parallel Bibles and changing the font and doing a triple click and shift key and triple click and turning the live click on and opening up instant details and adjusting the windows. And when you get stuff set up the way you like it, save it. And you know what? A month from now, you're going to say, I have a better idea. I can make it even better. And that's the exciting thing, because every time you play with workspaces and get to know them better, you'll be able to fine tune how you want to customize them. So I really just encourage you to play with workspaces. Again, this is just sort of a quick overview, and that's about all I wanted to say. So that's all I have for now. A lot. Any questions that maybe I can help or Mark can help with that people might have?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Sorry, I was muted and I had to go shut my doors real quickly because my dogs were barking really loudly, so it took me a second there. But great job, and that's not just my opinion. We've had several people comment so far. Here's one: this webinar rocked! ! Richard did a great job. Nice. Triple exclamation marks. I'll watch the recording to get more out of it. I'd recommend this to others. So really good job. And yes, we do have some questions you can answer here.
I hope I can. Mike, you might have to help me.
I'll be glad to. I'm sure you can do it. Let's see. Here's one. We've had several people that were interested in taking another look at the categories in your library because they really liked how you had those. And one question was even, would it be possible to like have you send a picture out or something of them so people could see that? But at least maybe they could take screenshots now if you just show it to them, because they liked that.
Yeah, and let me just go through my categories just real quick too, and let's expand this out. One thing I did like, especially with commentaries, a lot of times when you get into studying, at least for me, with commentaries, I like to have a balance. So analytical commentaries tend to be a little dry, but they give me really good factual information covering all sorts of angles of that passage. Background commentaries are good because you want to know about the cultural background, the historical background, and that's good. Exegeticals is for getting the meaning of the context and how to use it. Theological journals, so there are so many different types of commentaries with different slants to them. So it's really nice to pick one from each of these categories and create a favorites. Or if I'm studying a particular thing and if I'm preaching, the one thing that's nice about creating folders and having commentaries in the folders is that if I'm preaching, because of the way Accordance works by going off of the first commentary it finds, underneath its category, I can just move a whole folder at a time to the top or to the bottom. In the case may be by accident. But yeah, you can move that whole thing around, and then now these books will be the first books that I see when I get into it, which is nice. And so, but yeah, I think it took a long time. I have main, I have specialized. The best specialized commentaries are the IVP. They do an outstanding job with specialized dictionaries. I mean, foreign dictionaries and indexes and miscellaneous. So yeah, maybe I can talk to Linda because you can't see everything in one screenshot here of how these are, but maybe we can create a video on that sometime, Linda, and just do a little simple video that people can see how I categorize them and put them together.
Yes,
the most important thing to remember though is put your favorite ones always at the top of the list. They said Joseph was like Kareem, he always rose to the top, and it's really true. You want your best works to be the first things that you get off the shelf. So you always want to move them to the top.
If you want to just slowly scroll through them right now, it will show up on this video.
Okay,
just slowly scroll through.
Okay, so I'm going to actually start with my text. So what I'm going to do is, and I haven't moved all my text around because new stuff comes in all the time, but I have my work text, and they are usually my translations that are keyed to Strong's or that are used in seminaries or colleges like the NA28 and so forth. Then I have just my English texts that are very popular, like the New Living and the Message and God's Word and Amplified. And some of these are the translations without the Strong's attached to them. So you can do that. And then you can see we have a lot of translation. Then I have just Greek text. I have Hebrew text. I have apocryphal texts. I also have apostolic texts, and then I put for my text my Septuagint text is in something by itself, and I have patristic texts and pseudepigraphas, and so yeah, you can see that there's all sorts of ways you can even save your text. Then we get into our tools. Again, I like to have in my main ones the dictionaries and encyclopedias that cover main entries for biblical studies, from A to Z. And so I start to put my favorite ones at the top, and but they're all there. I can pull any of them at any time. Specialized ones deal with like prophecy or world religion or Judaism or the Pentateuch or the prophets, all sorts of pocket dictionaries that are really good. See all the different types of theology. These are all little dictionaries on different things. Commentaries, I usually put my analyticals at the top, but I went through and I created a category for preaching. And I moved in my preaching commentaries that were there for preaching that had good outlines. And why I chose preaching, like for instance, if I open up why I call this a preaching commentary, it was created for preachers. But one thing you can do with a preaching commentary that I like is if I'm in Genesis and I go to Genesis, I want a preaching outline. And so with an accordance, you can use your little gear button to show the text as just a paragraph. Once I do that, it filters out everything out and just gives me an outline that I can use to say, this is how I want to preach it, right? And I can do this with several of the preaching commentaries. I look for how they outline things and will it preach. So that's how I do preaching commentaries. And then I go down, let's go back down here to my tools. So my commentaries, I set up, from preaching and analytical and theological. And if I'm doing a Sunday school lesson, teaching, application, word studies, evangelistic, there are very few evangelistic commentaries, but like Boyce and Christ-centered exposition, and even Matthew Henry was, I think, considered evangelistic. Single volume commentaries, devotional commentaries, something we don't really think about, but if you want just something to read through, they're excellent. Outlines, preaching outlines. So these are all found under commentary. So I just created folders for them. And then I don't really have any categories for my lexicons. I just moved my favorite ones to the top. Same thing with my Hebrew, same thing with Greek. And all of these are the same. I really do need to set up a category for my study Bibles. I did put lines between them. This is a little different. You don't have to do a folder. The study Bibles that I felt that gave me really good introductions to a book of the Bible, really good dates about the chronology of it, special information about it that looked at the text from a variety of perspectives. I put the top ones on top. And then those that were good, but not quite as good, I made a division line and added them, the other rest underneath it, because that's how I felt that was the best way to do those. So those, and I really don't have anything else divided up other than moving my favorite stuff to the top. So that's how I've done my library categories, just to let you all know. Okay.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, everybody's saying that's super. Let's see. A lot of people were wondering about actually being able to get some of these workspaces that you'd created. We have some of them on the Accordance Exchange. You may want to mention what that is, and we can probably get some of these and add them to the Accordance Exchange if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, I'll be glad to do that. Linda, we were going to do an experiment. The problem we have is that when I do a workspace, and let's go back to my topical workspace. When you do a workspace, you have to have all these books, because if you don't, you're going to get a ding, don't have this book, ding, I don't have this book, ding, I don't have this book. And that can be, to me, sort of disappointing. Because then I'm going, well, it looks like I only have 2 of those books. It's nice to know that, to see what we have, and but we can try it. Maybe what I need to do is in the next week is make a desktops or workspaces with books I know that come in, like our specialty starters and some of our Discover or Triple Learners. But yeah, if you can help me with that, Mark, we can try a few and see how they work for people. I'll be glad to do that.
Yeah, that sounds good. And Linda, did I miss any questions there? I think I covered them all.
Well, one thing I was going to show you.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to show you one thing. By the way, one thing about, I'm in the topical, I forgot to show you this, but you see this Bible knowledge commentary? It has the stuff on Moses. And remember on my gathered gold, I set the show text as paragraphs and remembered it. I wouldn't save it as this, but the thing that I like about having a topical commentary is that if I show it as paragraph, watch what happens to this text in Bible knowledge. I'm going to show that as a paragraph. Basically what it does is it creates for me a topical outline from that commentary on the topic. In this case, it's Moses. And I can copy this and put this into a paper or print it out or work from it. I think that is absolutely phenomenal, just to let you know, since I was there.
There were a couple of questions on the live click. People still. Oh, here's one. Am I able to change my live click to only open the lexicon rather than the lexicon and word usage? And I think there were a couple of others there on the live click. So, okay,
Yeah.
Maybe if you just briefly go over that.
Yeah. So on, well, I'll just do that from a workspace. So on a live click, and Mark, you're gonna have to double check me on this. But if I click on live click, I have a little gearbox here. And if you click on the gearbox, it tells you what you want. I want the lexicon only. I can turn everything else off. So that at that point, I can just click on heavens and only the lexical will go. So is that what you're looking for? That's all done very quickly in that little gearbox in the lookup types. But whatever you put a check mark next to is what it will work with, if you're holding the shift key down or not. I have all three on, but you don't need to have all three on. You can just have the one. Okay?
Yeah, that sounds great. Anybody else? If you want if you have a question that wasn't answered, you may want to type it back into the question box. Otherwise, I think those are all the ones that there were a lot related to live click. I was able to answer some of them, and I think you just covered that right there too. So let's see. Here's one from Drew. In a search results, for example, the word miracles, how do I get a verse to show in a new text tab? So
how do you get the verse to show?
Yeah, let's see. So if how do you get a verse to show in a new text tab? I'm not exactly sure what the question is there.
So from your search results. From your search results.
So you have miracles, right? And so there's my search results, and then you want to do what in a new tab?
Yeah,
just
so
one verse.
Yeah, you may just want to, yeah, if they just, I guess if there's a single verse that they want to look at, I guess you could right click on the verse reference.
A couple things. If you turn on, I thought well, here's what I would do. Maybe this is not right. So I'm going to go back to miracles, right? And I find miracles. Now, what you can do is, even though it's sort of redundant, but I can right click on it and I can do a search for it by word. And now it's opened up a separate item. So I can go back to here and leave this back to Genesis by just hit tab, oops, and return. But this is going to be where I can just look at my results. Also, don't forget in your analytics, you can open up the concordance search for it too. But I guess I don't. And if you have it here, by the way, if you have it here, if you click on it, it opens up a text, so a separate text window.
And that might be the only way to do it if you just want a single verse and nothing else in a new tab.
You can also show all text around it, which is sort of nice, which you can't do in the info pane.
It's something that you did show. It's something that you did show.
Ah, okay.
You had your search results, and then you opened in a separate text tab. It's something that you did show.
Okay. I'll have to go back and watch the video.
Okay.
Now, I want people to know we have more workshops going on today. In just an hour and a half, Roy will be doing a presentation on